jump in here. Happy Pride to everyone joining. Hello, 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 everybody. Ugh. So, Charlotte, I absolutely adore your content. I love your work. I love your just energy and advocacy in this space. Do you want to start off with just like a little bit of background on yourself? You know, how you started getting involved in just activism and advocacy?
Yeah, sure. First of all, happy Pride, everybody. I am
Happy Pride.
yes, very happy to join you today for this. Uh, Pride is coming at a particularly tough time.
Yeah.
I think it is more important than ever that we do have community. And that might sound a little corny on the surface, but it is. It's critically important that we're reminding each other of why it's important to lift up the community, remember our roots, remember that this celebration every year was born out of protest.
Mhm.
And I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of pissed all the time lately over the attacks on LGBTQ people. uh, I look at my career and how I got into activism, and it was really just seeing things that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
And that was motivated by everyone who came before us. The thing that I try to remind people is that the queer community is not a new thing.
Right.
Queer advocacy is not a new thing. You see queer advocacy all throughout American history. You see it going back to, General Lafayette, who was fairly openly gay when he was advising George Washington on how to organize the army during the Revolutionary War. I mean, we all throughout American history, you have openly gay folks, openly queer folks who are pushing us to be a better country, which has been like pulling teeth all this time. I felt like advocacy was merely picking up the baton. People our age, people of our generation, taking those sacrifices that were made by people who didn't or knew they wouldn't see the benefits of their advocacy,
Mhm.
and then doing our own advocacy to make sure that we're carrying that progress forward. So I got into writing, and I would have questions about LGBTQ rights or gender or really anything intersecting with that. And I started writing about it. Then I just started developing a social media platform. Then the Human Rights Campaign came calling and asked if I wanted to join their staff. So I became a press secretary there during the first Trump administration. And
Amazing. That's amazing.
I know it was pretty cool, but it was also a lot of work. It was very tough during the first Trump administration. And it really just kind of blossomed from there. I have spent, more than the past decade really working on these issues. And it's gotten to the point where, I have colleagues who I've known for 15 years or
Mhm.
longer who, we've kind of seen all this rapid change and also the backlash to that rapid change.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it's a really odd time too. And I think you said it great when you're just going into like the history of it all because it's not just American history, world history. LGBTQ folks have always existed. They've always been there. Um and just especially these last few recent years getting so much attention and unfortunately usually due to attacks on the community. When it comes to the past few years and what we've been seeing, I know a lot of conversation is taking place, like especially after the Kamala election. Like we've started to see some folks being like, maybe we need to abandon like the culture war they call it. These spaces where we're actually talking about like, oh, the culture war of like actual human lives, right? I don't like the name the culture war when we're talking about like these are people and their identities. Kind
Mhm.
of weird way to phrase it. But to use the vernacular for it going around, there's discussion of just abandoning the culture war because we need to win elections. When you're seeing that rhetoric, just I would love to hear your pushing back on that rhetoric.
Well, first of all, I hate that framing a culture war
Mm,
because LGBTQ people exist all throughout society.
yeah.
You're not LGBTQ because you subscribe to a certain political ideology or because you belong to a certain religion or because you're from a certain part of the country.
Mhm.
Most LGBTQ people in the United States live in the South and Midwest.
Yeah.
People don't know that. It's not the East Coast or West Coast, it's the South and the Midwest. That is the bulk of LGBTQ people in the United States. You have LGBTQ people who are Muslims, who are Christians, who are Jewish, who are Hindu. You have LGBTQ people who are conservatives, moderates, leftists. Whether or not you're attracted to someone of the same sex or the same gender, or whether or not you are transgender or non binary, has nothing to do with culture,
Yes.
nothing to do with it. What this comes down to are those who need everyone to follow their very prescribed, ridiculous, restrictive view on humanity, and those who just want to let each other live and let live. That's what it comes down to. And so, when a reporter brings up the term culture war, I really bristle at that
Mhm.
because what you're telling me is that you believe that being LGBTQ is a choice and that it should always come with a list of characteristics that are assigned to you because you're LGBTQ. And I find that incredibly insulting, reductive. I find it rather childish.
Yeah.
It seems like a very simplistic and incurious way of looking at the world.
It also feels like just such a slap in the face of like what are our values if not supporting community, diversity, uplifting marginalized folks, celebrating the right for everybody to live their lives, freely and happily. Those I think are deep core values, not even just I wouldn't even say exclusive to the left. And when you target this one group and make it the spotlight, it's so counterproductive. And I know it was a couple weeks back now that the DNC autopsy report came out. I don't know if you read through like the top lines on that, but they finally dropped it.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't talk about the fact that Biden stayed in it forever. They didn't talk about the conflict, the Israel Palestine war, and how that may have played into election results. They don't mention these things, but they do mention that one Trump ad about like the trans community and how it like sank the campaign. It's so insane that how like even we on the left are essentially playing into the right's rhetoric on this, where I mean, ideally, this wouldn't even be a discussion because, like you said, your identity, who you love, or how you identify has nothing to do with your political views. This
Hmm.
shouldn't be a political topic. It's just people living their lives.
Yeah, well, first of all, the DNC report was abysmally written. I read the whole thing. Um, I don't know who got paid to do that, but
Some
uh,
friend of Ken Martin's, I believe.
yeah, I guess so. That is the worst product I've ever seen produced, and not in terms of content. I mean, in terms of in terms of quality, just in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
writing.
They didn't cite
Writing,
sources. Like,
yeah. I mean,
why?
just in terms of writing, in terms of substance.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't have turned that into a grad school course.
I
It
wouldn't turn
was
that into a high school course. Like, let's be
yes.
real. It was
That's
rough.
exactly right. I mean, it was abysmally written. The what also angered me about reporting on that is that the trans ad was only the anti-trans ad was only mentioned one time.
Mhm.
It was mentioned in the second bullet point under the sloppy list of reasons that the writer gave. There was no data to back it up. There was no polling. In fact, if you look at all the polling, the exit polling after the 2024 election, trans issues are dead last among voters in terms of what they said they cared about.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I refuse to accept this framing that the anti trans ad was what pushed voters to vote either way. I
Mhm.
don't believe that. I don't.
No.
I think what that is is liberal, progressive hand wringing
Mhm.
over a fight that we didn't even get into.
Mhm.
We were fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. The Democratic Party spent years ignoring these issues, refused to engage on them meaningfully. President Biden did a pretty good job from the
Mhm.
White House, but in terms of Congress and in terms of the DNC and the DCCC, all these campaign arms, they did not do nearly enough in tackling the vile disinformation that was perpetuated
Mhm.
about the trans non-binary community.
Mhm.
And it would have been easy to push back against. Easy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a fight they got into. So no, I do not accept the framing from some political pundits. The anti-trans ad was effective.
I 100% agree. And I mean, it's so blatant too, because anyone that works in politics or is following along, even halftime, you can see that voters vote for what affects their personal lives, right? The economy was number one through and through. And I mean, frankly, whether it's the trans community or the entire LGBTQ community at large, your life is not directly impacted by those. Even the ones that try to scream about it online, like your life isn't being impacted. You maybe know a handful of LGBTQ folks in your life on a day-to-day basis. I do want to have you give a rundown though, because as we've discussed, this is a very hard time for the community. Of course, we are celebrating Pride. We are, joy is resistance, but at the same time, we do need to give a rundown of just all of the attacks because there are many. They are federal level and state level. For you right now, I mean, it would take an hour to go down everything that's happened, but what would you say are like your top line concerns that we should be paying attention to and ready to be in defense of the community on?
Well, the first thing top of mind is that, with all these attacks, which you're right, we could spend an hour running through all of them. But we need to understand that there are folks within the community who are disproportionately affected.
Mhm.
So, you know, my me as a white trans woman with some financial privilege, some professional stability, my life is not going to be nearly as hard
Yeah.
as a lot of LGBTQ people who are Black, who are Latino, who are religious minorities, who are working minimum wage jobs, just trying to get by while this administration is attacking them.
Mhm.
When we talk about um, uh, violence against LGBTQ people, homeless rates, unemployment, job discrimination, discrimination in the public square.
Mhm.
We're primarily talking about LGBTQ people of color and specifically Black LGBTQ Americans and specifically Black trans women.
Mhm.
Like that's where that is what keeps me up at night. The folks who don't have nearly enough advocacy or advocates in
Mhm.
politics pointing out that racism is intersecting with misogyny, is intersecting
Mhm.
with homophobia and transphobia. All these things pile up on each other. So yeah, I'm pretty pissed at the overwhelming amount of attacks on the community, but I'm far more worried about those who are especially vulnerable to these attacks. Um, I think the fact that we've had a bunch of children's hospitals get rid of their gender affirming
Yeah.
clinics is deeply concerning. The fact that we had 5,000 trans service members and their families who were kicked out of the military last year.
Mhm.
uh, the fact that um, every time there's a mass shooting in the United States, you have a core part of the far right online space who immediately claim that it was perpetrated by a trans person,
Yeah.
regardless of if a trans
Any
person was.
evidence, anything, yeah, that it immediately comes out every single time.
That's right. And this is going to keep accelerating.
Mhm.
The goal of the Republican Party, and specifically Donald Trump, is not to stop with trans people.
Right.
And that should be enough for everyone to push back and fight against this fascism. But it doesn't stop with trans people. They're coming after the entire LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll speak to, occasionally I'll speak to a white gay man who I'll get the impression that he is believing that he has somehow achieved escape velocity from discrimination. And that's not true. They're coming after you too. They want to ban same sex marriage.
Yeah.
Thank God the Supreme Court has already rebuffed that once this past year. But they're still going to come after same sex marriage, adoption.
Mhm.
They're going to come after, I would say, employment protections if they can do that. The fact that in
And
most
even
of this
the
country.
conversion therapy, ruling from the Supreme Court where, gosh, I can't remember the state with the case, but, like, states allowing conversion therapy, which is proven torture.
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Conversion therapy doesn't work. It doesn't. All it does is get adults or young people into this ridiculous mindset in which they're suppressing who they really are,
Mhm.
which leads to severe mental health issues, which leads sometimes tragically to suicide. I mean, conversion therapy doesn't work. There are tons of closeted gay folks in evangelical churches who are tragically living a lie, much to the detriment of their mental health and to the
Mhm.
stability of their families. So,
And what, in your opinion, so whether you like for folks watching who, whether they're a member of the LGBTQ community or just allies, we're heading into the midterm elections, of course, whether it's electorally or actions they can be taking a part of in their everyday lives. What do you see as like the best path forward and what people should be trying to do as we defend from these attacks?
well, I would like non-LGBTQ people to speak up more.
Yeah.
This question comes around pride every year. Like, what should we be doing as a community? And I think we're already doing a lot. I want to see non-LGBTQ folks, both lawmakers and folks who are not lawmakers, speaking up against hatred.
Mhm.
From my perspective, specifically on trans rights, I think there are a lot of people who nominally support trans rights, but are intimidated by understanding trans issues.
Mhm.
And my message to them is that trans equality is not hard to understand.
No.
It's not. I realize that the terminology may seem a little intimidating sometimes, and I get that. Fine, but understanding that this is not a choice trans people make.
Mhm.
You can't choose to be trans. That's not how it works. Any more than you can choose to be gay, any more than you can choose to be straight or
Mhm.
not transgender. So, what I would really love is for non LGBTQ people to do just the most basic research on these issues,
Mhm.
understand what it means to be transgender, understand the challenges we're facing, and then, call on our leadership, our political leadership, to hold the line
Mhm.
against hatred. I don't think this is complicated. I
No.
really don't.
I think some people get intimidated by what I've seen personally, like obviously not trans myself, but just like as an advocate in, left-leaning spaces, I'll see a bit of intimidation of like, I want to talk on this, but I'm not sure how to do it correctly. And
Mm,
they feel as though by asking the question, it could be coming off as insensitive. So I would like to push back on that as well. I
mhm,
think people should be comfortable asking questions. There is an overwhelming lack of representation of the trans community in our media, in the public eye. It's okay that you don't know these things.
mhm,
It's not a bad thing that you just don't have this knowledge, and folks should be comfortable asking questions. Obviously, there's a polite way to do it,
mhm,
um, but I would rather be asked a question that, oh gosh, it worded wrong, it's not totally PC or whatever, and, like, have that conversation with someone than have them just sit there and not ask and kind of avoid the topic entirely. So, I think we need to encourage people to be like, this is something you can talk about, like, no one's gonna hate you for not knowing these things. I think
mhm.
we on the left can do better in encouraging that out of folks.
I agree. I agree. And I don't think that people should be afraid to ask questions. I
Yeah,
don't. I will put a little bit of nuance here, though,
yes.
because I think any given trans person can tell you that it's very frustrating for someone. to not do any research at all, and then they meet you at a party, and suddenly they're
And they
face to
want
face
you to
with.
give them the whole rundown.
Right, yeah, no, yeah, please, yeah.
No, no.
Because they're at a party and they
Mhm.
meet you for the first time and they've never met a trans person. And instead of just being an individual there, suddenly like, oh, hey, can you school me on trans rights? Because I have you here.
Yeah.
And like, listen, friend, I'm just here to have a good time, to drink and dance with my friends.
Mhm,
And suddenly I'm having to do a seminar on trans issues. I mean, that's a
mhm.
bummer. And no other, I can't say no other group, but I will say that I feel as though trans people go through this the most lately.
Yeah.
Is that trans people of all backgrounds? Is that we are in these spaces with people who don't know trans people or have never met a trans person. And they've done no research at all on trans issues because they do have questions, but they haven't made an effort to
Mhm.
understand it outside of suddenly meeting a trans person and thinking, oh, I have a teacher here.
Right,
This
right,
person can teach me.
right.
So I understand it. I'm not. I love the curiosity.
Mhm.
I love the willingness to understand. I don't love the lack of effort.
I fully agree, and I'm glad you added that caveat too, because I think we do this with marginalized communities a lot, where we kind of put, um, the responsibility of being an educator on them, right? We all have the internet. If you're watching this right now, you have the internet. Like, you can do a little bit of background and stuff yourself. L Questions and stuff I think that are good to ask. Also, like, time and place. If we're hanging out at a party, just enjoy the party. Maybe, like, shoot a text later. Like, you're confused about, like, the way an issue is being covered in the media. After doing some research, you have, like, further questions. Like, do some background yourself. But also, yes, I think this happens a lot, and sometimes it's well-intentioned. Like, I see the term all the time. It's just like in activism spaces, it's like we should be letting Black women in particular lead. I'm like,
Mhm.
love the sentiment there, but that's putting all of the weight and the responsibility on the Black women. And it's just like, it's okay to also like come in as an ally and be like, we're gonna pick up some of the weight here. So same thing applies.
Yeah. And listen, you know what really makes me happy is when someone tries to get to know me as an individual first
Yes.
before asking about, trans equality or trans issues. Because I am an individual who happens to be transgender.
Yes.
I am not a trans person who just so happens to have individual characteristics, you know? So if someone is trying to get to know me as a person and says, "Hey, Charlotte, you seem cool. It's been great talking to you. Mind if I ask a quick question that's been on my mind?"
Mhm.
I think that's the way to approach it, recognizing the humanity and the individual before just putting front and center, "Oh, it's a trans person.
Mhm.
I can talk to them about whatever there's." So yeah, it's not hard, but at the same time, think about it this way too. Like, let's say you're at like a barbecue or some kind of social gathering or something, and you meet someone who is pregnant.
Mhm.
Uh, you meet a pregnant woman. I mean, would you ask a ton of invasive questions about how she got pregnant and all the medical procedures that she needs to
Right.
get. And, it's the same principle
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
And these are things that if you really were curious, if you really wanted to know these things, you could look them up.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Um, I do also on, like, one final topic, I with us going into the midterms, because, again, we saw it in 2024, especially, like, the trans community in particular, just being used as a talking point, even though, as you said, per polling, this is bottom of the barrel, because it's just not affecting American lives. What would you like to see, um, from officials that are running? Um, and what do you have any concerns going into the midterms of how, like, the elections may trigger further attacks or change the field?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep it real with you. This is going to be a very tough cycle for trans people.
Mhm.
It's going to be a very tough cycle because I think Republicans have nothing to show for the past 2 years. They've made no real policy changes that help working class families.
Mhm.
They have been incompetent in with this war in Iran, with the economy, with tariffs. Gas prices are up. People are really struggling right now in the United States economy. And so, really, all Republicans have left is to campaign on fear.
Yeah.
And because we already had Dobbs, which nixed abortion as an issue, I think Republicans are going to really lean into transphobia
Mhm.
for this November. And I think a lot of Democrats are going to make the mistake of completely avoiding trans issues,
Mhm.
and that's tragic.
Yeah.
So, what I am hoping is that over time we will be able to convince enough Democratic lawmakers to understand that these are not hard issues to campaign on. These are not hard issues to debate. It just takes a little work, a little effort, and a modicum of the courage that it takes just to be a trans person living in this country. A country I love, by the way. I love being an American.
I know
Love my
they
country.
always say we hate America, and it's like, no, we love
Sure, but I
America.
want to make
That's
that
why we're
clear.
doing this
Like,
work.
I really do
Mhm.
love my country. I would not
Mhm.
have served my country if I didn't love it.
Mhm.
But we are not on the right track right now on any measurable level. And if Democrats really want to show the American people that we deserve their votes, we need to have some goddamn confidence in our values. We need to not be so apologetic about what we
Yeah.
believe in.
There's always like that like any messaging topic on from Democrats really does seem to just fail to fully take a stand, like trying to please everybody. And sometimes it's like I said earlier on this live, getting back to our core values of like what do we actually care about? We care about making this a better world for our children and equality, diversity, inclusion, um, all these terrifying terms that the right will make so scary, but really all it means is just like any person, we're living our full lives happily and freely. I will leave you with one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been asking literally everybody I interview these days. Um, in this moment, it is very hard. We're all very stressed. Some of us are scared. Some of us are burnt out. What is giving you hope and keeping you in the fight right now?
Every day in this country, even with everything going on, there are tens of millions of Americans who wake up, who collect our trash, who teach our kids in public schools, who go to work at hospitals, who do social work for people who desperately need that kind of community support. There are tens of millions of Americans who, regardless of what's happening in the rest of the country, get up every day hoping to help those around them. That's what's given me hope. And I wish that our politicians, regardless of political party, would take that as their example, that as their cue for how to act in this country.
I love it. That is beautiful messaging and just what I need right now. So, Charlotte, thank you again for taking the time to join us here at Feel Good Action. If you are joining us from Charlotte's page, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that works to use digital media to uh, get people engaged. We have a ton of tools to make registering to vote as easy as possible for yourself or your loved ones. Click of a button, you can send them that form, you can verify voter registration. Very important now, especially with all the redistricting efforts. Make sure your voting location hasn't changed. But really trying to do everything we can with using digital media tools to fight for resilient communities, just societies, and a diverse, welcoming community for everyone. We also, if you're tuning in from Feel Good Actions, and we are joined today by Charlotte, an incredible activist, advocate doing this work for years. I cannot thank you enough for all the work you put into this. Truly an inspiration. Every time I see you, I'm just like delighted. I'm like, I'm in a room with Charlotte. Like, this is fantastic.
Oh,
So
stop. And
I'm
Alex,
glad you got that way.
I absolutely adore you. And I'm so grateful for all of your labor in this movement. I mean, you are just such a leader and you do an incredible job of fighting for the goals that we all have for this country. So thank you so much for everything you do.
And thank you. All right. And thank you all to everyone who tuned in today. Charlotte, I'm sure I will be seeing you soon. But everyone rest up, get ready. We're going to keep fighting the good fight.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.